So my first experience was bad, actually. I remember it. It's drilled in my head. I remember being in preschool and like grabbing like the handful of crowns and just making like this cool color thing, and like another kid crumpling it up and saying that's not art. And that's always stuck with me. And then I loved to draw as a kid and make things, whether it be, we had a creek. I'm from Kentucky, and there's a creek in the backyard, and we would pull clay from the banks and just make stuff with it, and make a mess on the porch with building things. But and then I had a friend in grade school whose father was a graphic artist, and I remember he was the first one to show me some new mediums like pastels and the shading. I still remember him teaching me how to draw an apple, and the light coming in one direction and the shadow being cast on the other side. Those are some earliest memories of making art, and I didn't know how to make any money doing that, so did landscape design for a company for a few years, and then got into the restaurant business, actually. My dad's a restaurateur, and worked with him for about 7 years. Then I moved to St. Louis to open up my own restaurants, and that didn't work out. And then, I was always doing art on the side. People knew me as an artist, but I never was pursuing it as a professional career. Then I did some construction work. Then at that time I met my wife, and she was always encouraging me to do more art. And so eventually, with her encouragement, I started to pursue it as a career. And so just like many artists, I was painting and doing that, and I wanted to explore sculpture. But traditional sculpture is very, it costs a lot. It's not very cost effective to have big tools, and it's messy. So, your neighbors aren't really gonna like you if you're, chiseling stone all day. So I started doing paper mache, but I was making them look like cast bronze, the way I'd paint them and finish them, mostly animal busts. And then I started doing the cardboard. People were impressed with, I think, what you can do with it, manipulate it to get these interesting shapes that are recognizable. And then all of a sudden they realize that it's cardboard, and that they want to touch it, and it's very tactile. And then there's the fact that it's available to any of us. We dispose of it every day in our lives. So I don't think I've ever bought any. It's all, I get phone calls regularly or emails of people like, do you need this cardboard? I just got a bunch or whatever. So it's a never-ending supply at this point. And now it's going well, most of my stuff is smaller animal heads that most anybody has room for. You'll see that these things are a little bit larger. I've got a full-size chimpanzee that's downstairs, and I'm working on a giant tortoise right now. That shell is taking, like you asked me how long stuff takes. Like one of my little gazelles, I've made about 12 of those. So those things, those go pretty fast. I can make that from start to finish, including paint and dry time, in like 3 days. It's probably only 8 to 10 hours of work in there. But this tortoise shell I'm working on probably has 40 hours in just the shell. So there's a big difference on what you're doing and how detailed you want to be as you're making things. Some things are very well thought out and designed, but there has to be a little wiggle room. I would say that there's some work done like an architect where you've designed and planned everything, but a lot of it's done kind of like a trim carpenter where you're measuring as you go each individual piece, and just you're not necessarily saying I need a 7-inch piece to go right here, but you're holding up a piece of cardboard and just marking it with a pencil real quick to where you want it, how long. But typically most of my sculptures are busts of animals, so I'll take 1/4-inch plywood and make just a profile of that animal, and then attach it to a back with a French cleat. And so that's all made out of wood. And at that point, you've got a very rough outline of whatever you're making. And then the rest is just me bending the cardboard with my hands and gluing them in the place that I want them and cutting them to the sizes that I need as I go. Some are very symmetrical, so And if I'm making one piece to the right, I just copy that piece, except, the opposite direction, and make it for the left side. So some, up and down are very similar, then some are more free form. It's just I kind of get bored with doing it the exact same way. So I just mess around and see if I still like it. And sometimes it works out. Sometimes I have to take stuff back apart. Sometimes a shape can get away from you, or you're working too closely and you haven't stepped back and really looked at, what you're doing. Sometimes you can get a little wonky and got to go back and take it apart and fix it. We all choose what to do with our time, so I watch less TV, and obviously there's less opportunities to go out over this past year. So pretty much any of my alone time is spent in the studio. So what that means is I'm mainly a full-time dad that stays home and takes care of my kid. So nap times and evenings is when I do all my work, or when my wife is home. And then more recently, now that grandma's been vaccinated and stuff, she's been taking him for a day. So production's gonna start to go up a little bit, and I'll have a little bit more time. But I don't know, it's just what I enjoy, working and making things. So it doesn't feel, even though it's a job and I have commitments to make, it doesn't feel any pressure. And part of that's good communication, making sure you don't bite off more than you can chew, and adapting and just being honest with people. Like, I turn down work sometimes, or I say, I don't have time for that right now. But I try to do everything I can to make things as fast as possible. I think it's great. I've sold work, I've gotten noticed through it. It's fantastic. I think the worst thing about social media, as far as being a creative, is comparing yourself to others. We're all on different paths and different timelines, and I think you can really get down looking at someone who's putting out a ton of content and being really successful, and you might question, why am I not doing that? And I think if you can stay away from looking at others as inspiration, or not stay away from that, but look at it, that way, as things to, if you can pull those things out and not let some of the negative things that can come across, comparing yourself to where others are, I think it can be very good. But you got to keep that in mind.